Welcome to The Explainer. Let's dive right in because we've got a fascinating one today. I want you to take a second and really examine your own brand loyalties. Have you ever noticed how some people will defend modern tech billionaires on social media with an intensity that you'd honestly usually reserve for a religion? Well, today in part 41 of our series, we're unpacking this exact phenomenon. We call it the corporate messiah. It really forces us to ask this incredibly provocative question. Why exactly do we treat tech leaders like they're gods? I mean, think about it. Are we just buying their electric cars or smartphones strictly for their everyday utility? Or are we actually fulfilling a much deeper, hidden psychological need when we pledge our absolute loyalty to them? The source material points to a massive, undeniable shift in our culture. Silicon Valley founders are increasingly viewed as way more than just business administrators. They've become omnipotent superstars. Their companies aren't just corporations anymore. They've totally transformed into sacred entities within our modern culture. And the brand loyalty they command, it genuinely rivals religious devotion. So, here's the roadmap for our explainer today. We'll start with the rise of the corporate messiah, then the evolutionary psychology of leadership, the cult of personality, the fear of death and immortality, saviors of the future, and finally we'll ask, will we worship code? All right, Section 1, the rise of the corporate messiah, and how modern CEOs became cultural icons. Just look at specific executives. Figures like Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Sam Altman, and Jeff Bezos, they have effectively become omnipotent superstars. The financial markets and the media have completely bought into this CEO as hero narrative. This isn't just about profit margins and quarterly reports anymore, right? This level of intense public adulation heavily influences global investment and shapes society itself. It commands a loyalty that literally matches religious fervor. Moving into Section 2, the evolutionary psychology of leadership, looking at the biological roots of hierarchy. To really understand this modern worship, we have to look at the dual strategies theory. Basically, our ancestors selected leaders based on two very distinct pathways. On one side, we have prestige leadership. This is earned by generously sharing knowledge, expertise, and resources, which makes followers feel genuine admiration. On the flip side, we have dominance leadership. This relies heavily on threat, force, and power asymmetry, resulting in a following that's driven by fear mixed with respect. Over time, humans evolved a deep biological sensitivity to both of these systems. And this contrast hits the nail right on the head. Looking at the biological archetypes, we can contrast the prestige-style leadership of a Tsimane woman in the Amazon, who leads by generously sharing vital social knowledge, with the dominant-style leadership of a primate alpha, who maintains order through sheer physical force. Then, the structural models show how these primitive behaviors perfectly map onto human status and influence. Today's corporate leaders? Well, they often blend both of these primal strategies to maintain their grip on our attention. Which brings us to Section 3, the cult of personality. You see, a cult of personality isn't just organic everyday popularity. It is a systematically engineered phenomenon. It requires mass media, constant exposure, and a very specific social environment to truly take root. It literally transforms a mortal human being into an idealized, heroic, and nearly godlike figure. When we see tech leaders framed as these infallible geniuses who are single-handedly inventing the future, we're witnessing the modern secular mechanics of a personality cult right in front of our eyes. Section 4 gets a bit deeper, fear of death and immortality, focusing on terror management theory and legacy. This is what psychologists call terror management theory, or TMT for short. Here's the deal. Because we humans are actually conscious of our own inevitable physical mortality, a fun little concept called mortality salience, we carry around this latent existential dread. To prevent us from being completely paralyzed by that fear, our brains build a two-part anxiety buffer. First, we adopt a cultural worldview that promises us some form of immortality. Second, we seek self-esteem by trying to live up to that worldview. Basically, we desperately want to be part of something larger that will survive long after we are gone. Just read this classic marketing quote from Patek Philippe. Notice how it doesn't mention death at all, but it absolutely nails what psychologists call symbolic immortality. It's promising a legacy that outlasts your physical body. When people buy into the grand vision of a corporate messiah like Elon Musk, they're often buying a piece of that symbolic immortality. It's the feeling that they are actively contributing to a massive future, like colonizing Mars or revolutionizing human transportation, that will endure forever.
Section 5, Saviors of the Future, and seeking a symbolic safe haven.
So, how does this all connect? It's through something called the charismatic submission process. When society faces massive existential threats, things like climate change, economic instability, or global pandemics, our rational cognitive defenses are completely overwhelmed. They just short circuit. In response, our deeper psychological defenses activate. We psychologically retreat and instinctively submit to a confident, dominant, larger-than-life savior figure who promises absolute safety and a glorious destiny. This is exactly why figures like Elon Musk are frequently presented and wholeheartedly embraced as the literal saviors of our future. At that point, the leader ceases to be a mere CEO. They become a sacred protector. This comparative table brilliantly synthesizes how this has evolved across human history. We started with ancient god kings whose power was legitimized by divine lineage. Then we moved to modern personality cults, built on mass media and revolutionary heroism. Now, we are transitioning into an era of future AI deities, where legitimacy comes from perceived computational omniscience. The paradigm changes, the media changes, but the follower's role remains exactly the same, one of deep, unquestioning dependence.
And finally, Section 6, Will we worship code?
To understand why we might actually start worshiping code, we have to talk about HAD, the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device. It sounds complicated, but it's basically an ancient survival trick. Out in the wild, it was much safer to assume a rustling bush was a conscious predator rather than just the wind, right? Today, that exact same hardwired cognitive bias tricks our brains into projecting a soul, empathy, and divine intent onto complex black box AI algorithms. Because of this bias, we are already seeing the rise of the synthetic transcendent. And no joke, these aren't futuristic confettes. This is happening right now. We have Twitch streams featuring an AI Jesus dispensing guidance, robotic Buddhist priests in Japan delivering actual sermons, and art installations acting as AI confessionals that people say provide genuine spiritual comfort. This massive promise of omniscience is actively paving the way for algorithmic deities, highly personalized AI swarms that could one day act as a completely synthetic clergy. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly powerful question to wrap up this explainer. As the lines between technology, corporate leadership, and divine reverence continue to completely blur, do we really want to abdicate our human conscience and moral authority to synthetic lines of code? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I want you to really think about who or what you are loyal to today. Catch you next time.